Let me ask you a question. And maybe it seems obvious. Why do we do the things we do to serve one another in a family, in a household? Why do you dry the dishes, wash the dishes, cook, do laundry? Why do we serve or help in our church communities? Why do we help serve in our wider communities in all the different ways we might? I hope it's obvious that, at least in most of those circumstances, the reason we serve is simply because we are in a community, we're in a family, whether it's a literal family, a household, or a church family like a congregation or our community, and there's a sense of this is what you do in a community, this is what you do in a family, in a household. You serve, you help, we take turns doing the things that need to get done, and it's not about getting recognition, and it's not about getting paid or compensated for it, at least not in a household. You get paid for your job, maybe. You make money doing what you do for a profession, perhaps. But there are things we do in a household that are just, this is my role in the household, is I help. And when there's a job to be done, we all pitch in. And sometimes I set the table, or sometimes I wash dishes, sometimes I'm on drawing duty, and sometimes we're folding sock balls or mowing the grass, whatever things need to be done. It's not about a transaction, though. It's not about, well, I will help out, but then I need to be compensated. I'll help out doing the laundry, I'll take the trash out, but I need to get paid for it. Maybe we teach kids to learn to do chores every so often with some kind of payment or allowance or things, but at its core, being a part of a household is we do this because it's who we are, it's to whom we belong. And in a household, part of what we do is we serve, and it's not about trying to get something in return. It's not a transaction, and it's not a deal, or I'll do this in order to get that in return, right? That's such an elemental part of our lives that maybe we don't even realize it. But it also runs counter to the transactional deal-making thinking that is all around us all the time, especially in our wider culture, where it's really easy to hear people say, I'm not going to do that unless I get something directly in return. I'm not going to help unless I will be paid. I'm not going to volunteer unless there's something in it for me. We only do things if there's a direct benefit immediately back. But that's not how it works in the reign of God, right? This is one of the recurring challenges of learning to think in terms of what Jesus shows us in the reign of God. First of all, God deals with us not on the basis of earning, but on the basis of an economy of grace, right? Having loved us, cared for us, provided for us day by day by day without our earning it. That's a hard thing for us to admit, who want to imagine that the reason I get to eat is because I must be such a hard worker or good person or virtuous, righteous person. And instead, Jesus goes around saying things like, God sends sun and rain on the just and on the unjust alike because God cares about everybody, and daily bread is a gift because we are hungry, not something we earn because we were good enough. And that our relationship with God is all on the basis of grace, not that I've been good enough or well-behaved enough or served enough in order to get in good with God's graces, but rather it's a gift in the first place. I haven't earned it by my rule-following or good behavior. But the flip side of living in an economy of grace is when we serve one another, and we are called to serve in the household of God, we don't do it in order to get prizes either. There's no additional merit badges or bonus points. We simply serve because we're part of the household. So there's this kind of strange, kind of difficult story Jesus tells. And not difficult because it's complicated, but because, man, it just smacks us upside the head with this reality. If we live in a household of grace, if we live by God's economy that's not a transaction, not only are we loved and we belong by grace, but everything we do isn't something we get credit or payment or reward for. We do it just because that's what our job is, that's what our role, our calling is. So Jesus imagines a household, and it seems he's talking to masters, people who have slaves or servants in their households, and he goes, I know you all. When your slave or servant comes in from doing work outside, you say, hey, now get my dinner ready, and you just expect them to do that. I'm not sure Jesus is condoning it, but saying that seems to be how you operate. You just demand them to do things. And yet, why is it that you seem to think before God that when you do something good or righteous, you're supposed to be getting bonus points or special recognition? No, our response, Jesus says, when you do what you're supposed to have done, is just, hey, I'm a servant in the household. This is just what I'm supposed to do. We're just part of the household, and we all then do the work of serving that needs to be done. To take Jesus seriously, to take the whole New Testament, to take the gospel seriously, that our relationship with God is not something we earn or buy or is accomplishable as a deal or a transaction, but is completely a gift of grace, also means that now we belong in the household. Now we have been claimed and we belong. God says, okay, you're part of the household, and here's what we do in the household. We serve and love and take care of one another. So the work that we do together as church, the work we do officially as church projects, the things we do as sort of sly undercover agents for the reign of God, the ways we treat others with justice and mercy, the ways we go out of our way and give additional time or energy or sacrifice for people, these are not our attempts to get extra credit or special recognition from God, but rather it's simply, this is what you do when you're in a household. I know sometimes it can be tempting, and sometimes respectable religious people feed this, to think that one day in glory there's going to be sort of like this big honor award ceremony where God hands out gold stars or crowns for people who do extra hard work. And there's one scene in the whole New Testament that imagines God doling out crowns for people who've been faithful servants in the kingdom. And the one thing they do immediately after they've gotten these crowns is they lay them at Jesus' feet, as if to say, I'm just a servant in the household. I don't deserve this. This isn't about needing recognition. I've simply done this for the sake of love. That's what we do in a household. That's what we do in the family of God if God operates on an economy of grace. One more example. There's this well-known story, right, where Jesus talks about one day he'll say to people, I was hungry and you fed me, and I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, a foreigner, and you welcomed me. I was in prison or sick and you visited me. And the righteous will say, when did we do any of those things? In other words, they weren't even aware they were doing something for Jesus at the time. They weren't doing it for credit, for bonus points, for a gold star. It's just what you do in the household. So this scene that Jesus gives us that we're going to look at this Sunday about being servants in the household who just say, hey, this is just my job here. I'm not here to get extra credit here. It's woven throughout all the teachings of Jesus, and it's really just what it means to live in a household, to live our whole lives daring to believe God doesn't operate on the basis of transactions or deals, where I do this and then God gives me a prize, but rather you're beloved, you're claimed, you belong. Now, what will you do with this life for the sake of the whole household of the one you've been brought into? That's the conversation we're having this Sunday. And I hope you'll join us for that conversation and then for all the ways we may seek to live it out in the households of faith we find ourselves in. See you Sunday.